So, one of the things I love most about informational reading is the ability to have text features to help us to visualize and see things that we would not necessarily be able to see. Like, for example, this globe showing us the journey that Henson took from New York to the North Pole and how he arrived there, which it says, by Mr. Perry's boat and all that. It also, tell us when he was able to get there and the type of sea animals or sea creatures that would have been found in a place of such. So, this article that we're going to be focusing on, or this section of the article we're going to be focusing on, is the Out of the Shadows. So, the subheading that we're going to be focusing on is Out of the Shadows. And we are going to find the main idea as well as the details needed to support the main idea. As I said before, the main idea always comes in your own words after reading the section, and the details are basically taken from the text as a backup or to prove that you know that this is the main idea. So when I read Out of the Shadows, the main idea of Out of the Shadows was that it took a while for Mr. Henson to get credit for being the first person on the North Pole um, because he was black. Instead, Mr. Perry was the one who got credit for discovering the North Pole. He did have a co-discoverer. He was not the only person there that day. He had someone that was there with him. So the main idea of the section Out of the Shadows would be where Mr. Henson received credit for his role in the discovery of the North Pole. So that's the main idea. The main idea is usually, as I said, in your own words. Now, what details can I find from the text to support this main idea? So, detail one, and this is where you'd go back to the text. So, detail one talks about where in the first paragraph of this section, it talks that only Mr. Perry had gotten credit for discovering the North Pole. And it says he took his glorious place alongside Ferdinand and Marco Polo as one of the history most illustrious explorers. So this is detail one, that he was not credited at the same time. So until later on, that is. So the detail one was only, and I'm going to paraphrase, Perry got credit for discovering the North Pole. And discovering meant that they were the ones who got there first. It was there. They were just the ones that got there, or, got there, stood on it first. It says that that's the first detail. So he wasn't discovered until later on. Then detail two said that in the coming decades, Henson got some minor awards. He was admired, but his achievements were ignored. So here it said that Henson, got some awards, but history books ignored his achievements as an African American. So that's detail 2. Now the third detail here, so detail 3 says, after his triumph in the Arctic, Hensel lived a quiet life in New York with his wife and all that. So these are just additional details. Like it just adds to what the details, but it does not add to, what we're saying here. But it just gives us some background information on the rest of his life during this time. So it also says that, um, there are other people where, he was very proud, his family was proud of him. But it says by the time that he died in 1955, he says America was changing and Americans were fighting for equal rights. And in the 1960s, new laws outlawed discrimination because of race and ethnicity. And it says the accomplishments of African Americans began to rise up out of the shadows. So this is where, so because, so I would say now I would go ahead and say that in the 1960s, uh, laws were formed that went against discrimination. And this was when Henson was starting to be recognized for his roles. Now, this is just the start of that. So now we're at the point where, so now we know that, he's going to be recognized for his role. And the final part says here, and, having a fourth detail, nothing is wrong with that. You can actually have a detail 4. Detail 4 could be where it talks about, after he was moved to Arlington National Cemetery and buried where everyone was. And it says his headstone marks the grave features a picture of his face on the Arctic scenes of the world. So in detail 4, he was recognized as a co-discoverer of the North Pole. By them moving him into the Arlington Cemetery. So what we did was we looked at the article we're currently focusing on is Frozen Dreams, as you guys know. And the main idea of the section that we looked at was Out of the Shadows. And it basically talked about this is where Mr. Henson finally got credit for his role in the discovery of the North Pole. And what details did I see about that? In detail 1, it talked about how, he was not recognized in the first place. In detail 2, it talks about him getting some awards, but not for that one. And not until detail 3 and 4, where some laws had been passed, he was then recognized for his role as being a co-discoverer with the North Pole expedition. So in this lesson, guys, you guys learned how to find details and main idea, which is what the section is mostly about. And usually the main idea is usually done in your own words. And then we went ahead to find detail. What supported this detail? We went ahead and focused on the supporting detail, which is what I expect of you guys to do in your text.